Welcome to an episode of the No Rules Podcast. Your main man, Aaron Hutton's not here, but I'm your main man, Malik Smith. And today we're doing a very special episode. I've got a very special guest with me, joining me from overseas. I won't say where, we'll just say overseas. Jeremy Shulman, co-founder of the Fantasy Football Universe. He's going to talk with me about fantasy football. Obviously, that season is about to rear up real soon. So we wanted to get in. We want to talk strategy. We want to talk tips and tricks and FAQs and all the stuff for casuals like me. I am a casual. Spoiler alert, Jeremy. I didn't say this before, but this episode is for me. I am the person who needs this information more than anyone else.
I got you, Malik. Don't worry about it. I got you.
So yeah, before we get into it, let's just talk about Fantasy Football Universe and what you guys have been doing, because I love the content that you do on Instagram. It's great. So talk to me about fantasy football, how you got into it, what you guys are doing at the Fantasy Football Universe.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that in just a second. But first of all, we're basically family, known each other for a long time.
It's true.
And so really appreciate you having me on and getting a chance to combine on the platforms, because as you know, I do this stuff all the time too. And so we're in these podcast streets together,
Yes.
but never got a chance to get into it. But yeah, the Fantasy Football Universe is something we did about, we started up last January. So it's been going a year and a half so far. Have a good enough amount of traction that we feel like it's progressing to a point where we could eventually make this a career one day. So that's kind of the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But really, it's just a bunch of guys. Myself, Jesse Moeller, Essie Romero started it, and we just love talking ball. We started another company that we connected on via Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And so we just kind of broke off, formed our own company with the idea of just, making it, right? So we're all out here trying to make it. But most importantly, fantasy football, as you know, is just being able to shit talk. Sorry, I don't know, family friendly show here.
It's fine.
Cool. Being able to shit talk with your friends and be better than them at something, so you can, get over on them. So that's really the goal, is just to become better so that we can just have more crap to talk to our buddies.
So it's funny because I feel like fantasy football for me was like my intro into the sports gambling space, which is sort of where my profession took me. Because I always love stats, and I was just like a huge box score nerd. So it was perfect for me to kind of get into fantasy football, because I could remember Larry Fitzgerald's week 7 catches and yards and random crap like that. My brain slightly stopped working to that degree. It was really firing on all cylinders back when I was 22. It's not 100% all the way there, but what's the fantasy landscape right now? Because I feel like it's changed, and I'll say this as somebody who works in sports, I sort of fell off of fantasy football in terms of being super duper dedicated to it, because I was focused on another sport. I focused more in the NBA, so it kind of took my ability to really dive into the fantasy football space as heavily as I used to. Kind of took that away. So what's different now? If say you're somebody like me who hasn't paid as much attention, but I'm okay, I want to get back into it, and I don't know any of the guys of the last 5 drafts. So I know the main names, but if what's changed, do you think?
Yeah, so that's a good correlation, because I'm exactly the same in the NBA. When we left the States 10 years ago, I fell off of every other sport. And I was like, well, I'll hold on to the NFL. The season's shorter.
Yeah.
My wife and family can only stand me staying up till 2 a.m. once or twice a week, not 4 or 5 times a week. But I miss those NBA playoffs, man. That's some of the best sport
yes, sir.
You're going to find. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. So some of the names we're going to talk about this year are the rookies. I'm not too heavily invested in college football. I can give you the top names there, but I am, deep into the tape come January, February, once those rookies are declared, once they're getting ready for the NFL draft. And really from January, we're on to 2025 season. So we're heavily invested in these guys. But yeah, names like Patrick Mahomes isn't necessarily that fantasy stud anymore. He hasn't been for a couple of years, and there's a lot of things that go into that. But Number one is that Steve Spagnuolo, who you may know and others may know from New York Giants fame,
Familiar.
has been the defensive. He's been the defensive coordinator over there for years, and he's one of the best in the game now because he doesn't have to be the head coach, right? So, the Kansas City defense is amazing. So Patrick Mahomes doesn't need to be the Patrick Mahomes when Tyreek Hill was going nuts for like 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns a season. And Travis Kelce is, getting married, I guess. So
Yeah.
we
Stock
got
down.
like other
Its stock
other
is way down.
priorities. We got other priorities here in Kansas City, man.
Yeah.
So it's the names are not necessarily the names you want in fantasy.
Okay. That's actually a really good tidbit. When you're kind of going through your process, what's the first thing that you do, in terms of it, are you putting everybody into tiers? What's the first thing that you're going to do when you sit down and you're like, all right, I'm analyzing going into the season?
Yeah, tiers are important, but I think even more important than that is just kind of an understanding of situation, right? We kind of know the basic talent level of different players. We can understand what they've done in terms of past production, right? A big kind of saying and way of thinking to go about fantasy football is past production equals future production. I think that's mostly true, but then that doesn't necessarily give you an edge. So where you're looking to kind of find your edges are you sit down and you just try and think of team situation. For example, coaching changes, right? Where has the NFL landscape changed dramatically over the course of a season? You have a situation where the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, now has become the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach, right? So we can, try and take some of the things that he did in Tampa, and we saw with the Bucky Irving explosion, Baker Mayfield going off last season, and we can try to apply those things one-to-one to Jacksonville this season. That might not necessarily work, but there are ways to kind of think about that to find value in some of those Jacksonville players who didn't pop off last year. And with coaching changes, you also have player changes, right? So the Vikings situation is interesting because you have Sam Darnold, who has now moved on to Seattle. But the real issue is not necessarily what Sam Darnold was able to do. It's kind of the situation that he left vacant for J.J. McCarthy, who was drafted last season. The situation is Justin Jefferson, who we all know is a complete stud, TJ Hawkinson, who's a really good tight end, Jordan Addison, who is suspended for a few games but will be back. They just got Adam Thielen today. So Adam Thielen is back in town. And they've done a lot of things to that offense. And Kevin O'Connell, who's the head coach, is one of the best in the game. So it's kind of analyzing situation and how they change from year to year. And I think that's the biggest thing for me going into a new season, because while past production does equal future production, you have to find those edges, and those edges are typically in those changes.
Yeah. So in terms of edges, in terms of value, obviously the game has changed. They're throwing way more than they ever have. Although
Yep.
I feel like running backs are starting to come back into style, at least at the very top, right? Like the best ones are coming back into style. But when you're looking for value, is there a position that you often look first in terms of this person is going to anchor my team? Is it based on draft position? Is it like what when you're just like, okay, I have this type of league. I know I'm picking at this position. Like I need to be looking at this type of player. Or is it just like, hey, like, some guys are really, really great and, they all fall into this category, and then everybody else is sort of like pretty good and you just kind of throw a dart and you get what you get.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. Let's start with I want to bet on the combination of factors that really help in fantasy football. So those are the amount of volume that a player is going to get. How many targets as a receiver, how many touches as a running back is that player going to receive? The more volume, the better. I'm going to combine that with talent. Is the player incredibly talented? So we have a difference between the talent of a Christian McCaffrey and the talent of a Josh Jacobs. Both of those players are talented in their own way, but I don't think anyone is going to tell you that Josh Jacobs is more talented than Christian McCaffrey, right? There's probably no one more talented at the running back position than a Saquon Barkley or a Derrick Henry. But obviously, you can factor other things in there. So volume and talent, but then you need a good offense, right? So if we take Saquon Barkley, for example, on a great offense, he's getting all the volume. He's incredibly talented. But then the fourth thing that we really need in fantasy football is we need a bad defense. And we know that Philadelphia does not have that. So if we're talking about Saquon Barkley, he's a top pick this season. He was the running back one last year. That's all great. It's unlikely that he's the running back one this season, but he's probably very good. The thing that can hold him up is kind of that really, really good defense. A player, for example, like a Chase Brown, who is talented on the Bengals. He's getting the volume. He's on an amazing offense in Cincinnati, and they have one of the worst defenses in the league. While you're not taking Chase Brown over Saquon Barkley, it might be a better idea instead of Saquon Barkley to get a top receiver and then in the second round come back around and get a Chase Brown because the drop off might not be that steep.
So you're looking at it. It's a bunch of puzzle pieces that you're putting together.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be clear, when you say you want a team that has a bad defense, you're saying that because that means that the offense is probably going to get more snaps because their defense is
100%.
allowing the other team to score. Okay. So
Absolutely.
for those of you out there who are like super duper, like not paying that much attention to football, that's something to pay attention to, right? Like pay attention to how bad is this team's defense, because that means that their offense is probably going to be on the field more, which means said player that you drafted is probably going to get more opportunities on the whole of the season, and not necessarily every game, but like on the whole of the season, they may get more opportunities because of it.
And let me just give you a couple of names real quick. So we mentioned the Cincinnati Bengals. We know Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We know Joe Burrow. We know Chase Brown. Those guys are phenomenal values, pretty much every single one of them. I mentioned the Jaguars before. Jaguars are going to have a terrible defense. They have a new offensive coordinator. They got a brand new number one wide receiver in Travis Hunter, who's going to play both ways, but looks like he's going to play receiver. They got Brian Thomas Jr. from last season, who absolutely went off. But then you got the Dallas Cowboys. Micah Parsons has not reported. Travion Diggs, star corner, is not playing week one. Dallas is going to have a terrible defense, and they just got George Pickens. That offense is going to be chucking it. The Dolphins, good offense, bad defense. The Panthers, ascending offense, terrible defense. So if you're betting on most of those guys from those teams, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah. Shout out to the Cowboys. I watched that Cowboys propaganda on Netflix.
I haven't seen it yet. I heard it was good though.
Yeah, I mean, it's entertaining. It is entertaining. I will say that much. Okay, so where are we next in the process? So we've evaluated players. We're looking at teams that they're on. Where do you go next?
Yep. All right, so this is a big one, and this is kind of where people struggle, because in fantasy football, we want to make the playoffs. That's very important. But we want to win, right? We want to win money. We want to beat all of our 9 or 11 other friends. We want to win the whole damn league. So you need to bet on what we refer to in fantasy, and you probably heard this term before in other fantasy games, is upside over safety, right? You want the idea and the player who can be elite, even if they're not being valued as an elite player. You want that in their range of outcomes versus a player who's super safe. So Jared Goff is a good example. Jared Goff, Detroit Lions quarterback, he's got a lot of great weapons. Just lost his offensive coordinator, but shouldn't be a big deal. Threw a ton of touchdowns last season, but he's not ever going to be the quarterback one, right? He might get you there in a week or two, but you're hoping Jared Goff is like the quarterback 6 to 8 on the season, because then he had a really good year. Jared Goff is not running the football. He's simply dropping back and he's distributing the ball. Brock Purdy, another good example of a safe quarterback who's going to distribute. He's not getting you a ton on the ground, and their values are fine. But instead of those guys, I want Justin Fields. I want Justin Fields in New York, because Justin Fields, instead of those guys, right? Because Goff, you have to get him in the 6th round. If you're taking, who is the other guy I referenced? Brock Purdy. You have to get him in the 8th round. Justin Fields right now, you can get in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. Let's say 10th round. And he has the ability to be a top 6 quarterback quite easily because we know he's got the rushing chop. He's the third best rushing quarterback in the league right now. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Jaden Daniels, but those guys are going super high for a reason. You can get Justin Fields much later, and he has the potential to win you weeks. In addition to if he starts the whole season, which he should on that bad team unless he gets injured, which is a concern for everybody. He has the potential to finish the season as a high-end quarterback. So for me, I'm betting on that elite upside because Justin Fields can absolutely help me win my league because I collect value everywhere else. I get Justin Fields. Now, I can't only rely on Justin Fields. I might need like a Jared Goff or a Brock Purdy as well. But I want to bet on that upside there because I don't want to come in fourth place. I want to come in first place. And if Justin Fields hits and he hits that ceiling, I'm going to.
That's a really interesting point. Obviously, the dual threat, like you said, you picking guys like Goff, and I mean Purdy's got some. He can move around. He can move around a little bit, but I mean he's not obviously on the level of, like you said, Justin Fields, who is kind of mostly a runner and like can occasionally, throw the football a little bit. And not that I'm pushing back, obviously, because you made really good points. It's interesting that you picked a guy like Justin Fields because past production would tell you like this guy, the upside is there certainly, but like on the low end, he could end up sort of costing you. Now, granted, those were years with the Bears. He did have a decent year. I think the first 6 weeks that he played in Pittsburgh before they gave Russ the job.
6 to 8, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we saw some improvement, but it is interesting because to some people they'd be like a little, wary of taking a guy like that because they may just remember the Chicago years or remember that this guy got benched for a quarterback who ended up not really even being able to make it through the rest of the season. And it was just like, does Pittsburgh have a quarterback at all on this roster? But from your standpoint, you're saying bad team, situation where he has an opportunity to just get, touches and potentially have a couple weeks where, oh, wow, this dude really put up some numbers.
Yeah. And the thing with Justin Fields is he's always been a runner. He's not going to be Drake May, for example. Drake May in New England last season was running all over the place just out of necessity. The line was terrible. They didn't know what they were doing. Obviously, they were in a transition because that coach was pretty much out the draft. Was it even Mayo last year? I think it might have been.
It was Mayo,
but yeah, Vrabel, he didn't get a fair shake for me, but the Bill Belichick just setting up. Anyway, I'm a huge Pats fan. That was a mess. We don't need to go into that. But the point is that this year, Josh McDaniels is back. We know Josh McDaniels from the Brady days as the offensive coordinator. Mike Vrabel is there. They have stability. They have Stephon Diggs, and their wide receiver room is everything's set up for Drake May now. And everybody on the Patriots has now come out and said, May himself, McDaniels, we don't want Drake May to run as much. We want him to sit back in the offense. We want him to distribute. So for Drake May, I like his value. I like the fact that he's going to get rushing yards. He's going to ascend. But Justin Fields doesn't have any of those restrictions. He's not learning in like a phenomenal offense. He doesn't have all these weapons around him. It's like, I will grab this guy and we'll try to do something with him in Aaron Glenn's first season in New York. They got Garrett Wilson and no one else. Their rookie tight end, Mason Taylor. Maybe Breece Hall is a receiving threat. Hopefully they use him more than they seem to want to use him. And Justin Fields is going to be behind a mediocre offensive line with limited weapons, and he's going to be running for his life. So we like that in fantasy. Is he going to be a good reality quarterback for the Jets? I hope so. I like Justin Fields. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, the good thing for him is that they haven't had a good quarterback since Chad Pennington. I mean,
100%.
Sorry, Mark Sanchez.
Good quarterback.
Listen, back in my day, Chad Pennington, it's a model of consistency.
100%.
Okay. Where are you headed next in terms of your strategy? So we've located some guys who have high upside. I think you said this, but those are the guys that you're not taking high upside guys necessarily early on. You're probably looking for those guys a little later in the later rounds, correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way that I break it down is early round, middle round, and late round. in the early rounds is typically rounds 1 through 4. I want guys who can achieve their ceiling, but at the same time, you want a safe floor. You know that Saquon Barkley, that Derrick Henry, if these guys are healthy, they're going to be fed, right? And that's kind of what we want. At the same time, there's risk of injury because of that heavy volume. So you kind of need to factor that in. The other thing that I don't think enough people are talking about is last year there was an exceptionally healthy running back situation in the NFL. Very few starting running backs went down with injury. It was pretty much Christian McCaffrey and maybe nobody else, right? In fact, the running backs who went down with injury were some of the older guys, like a Zach Moss on Cincinnati, who then opened the door for Chase Brown to go nuclear in the second half. So we had an extremely healthy situation at running back. And that's why, like you said at the top, running backs are kind of coming back. It's because everybody was healthy. This year, I think we need to kind of expect that trend to not continue, but we never know who's going to get hurt, right? So you can't think about like Christian McCaffrey was hurt last year, he's going to get hurt this year, right? Because that's a good way to lose. At the same time, you need to make sure that it's baked into his costs. So you're not taking Christian McCaffrey over Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs. The conversation is, do you take him at the back end of the first round, middle to back end of the first round over guys like Derrick Henry, like Jonathan Taylor, like Bucky Irving? I know I'm missing a name or two in here, but that's kind of what you need to weigh in terms of the risk, because Christian McCaffrey, again, like we talked about, has that elite upside. We know he can be the best player in fantasy if he stays healthy. But I'm looking for, like you said, in the early rounds, elite ceiling, but also a floor to that player as well, and not really banking in on injury. It's a consideration, but it's nothing that I'm really looking for. In the middle rounds, I'm looking 100% upside. I'm trying to get guys who maybe are a little bit more boom bust than we're comfortable with. Guys I'm targeting there, Jameson Williams. Absolutely love JMO this year. They can't stop raving about him. Amon-Ra St. Brown came out and was like, JMO just keeps getting better. The new offensive coordinator said we're building this offense around him. So Jameson Williams, I absolutely love this year, but he's going to be a little more boom bust than you think like prime Deshaun Jackson. That's kind of the upside we're hoping for with the Jameson Williams. But other guys in those veins available in the middle rounds, George Pickens on Dallas. Jalen Waddle is one of those guys. Ricky Pearsall may be one of those guys. But then you're also looking for kind of the value of guys who didn't produce last year, or guys who were injured last year. So Jalen Waddle. Let's see who else. Steph Diggs, for example. Steph Diggs was absolutely killing it in Houston before he got injured. Now he's being taken in the 7th, 8th round. So you're looking for this combination of guys who can, vastly outproduce their ADP, average draft position, who can become guys who are these wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 types, and who are maybe considered a little boom bust, because if they're not, if they can find that consistency, those guys are going to be elite for you and they're going to help.
Yeah, I like the aggressive strategy, right? Of like, hey,
Yeah.
like this could go really well, this could go really bad. But and of course, like you said, that's why you have those guys at the top who have a pretty high floor, because they're going to be your anchors. They're going to carry you. Quote, knock
100%.
on wood for the injuries, obviously, but those guys are going to carry you. Then you can get a little bit more aggressive. And like you said, it's all about winning the league, right? It's not just about doing well. It's about winning the league.
That's right. You got to win.
Yeah, you got to win. Somebody's got to take home that pot.
Herm Edwards, man. Herm Edwards. We play to win the game.
There you go.
Man. Come on.
There you go.
That's it.
Okay, so you got your mid-round guys. I assume your late round guys is probably the same strategy of guys who have high upside, or are you looking at it any differently than the mid-round guys, or no?
I got to fill my roster, right? So here's the third thing that you really need to consider in fantasy is you need to know your league settings, right? You need to know if you're standard, half PPR, full PPR. You need to know if you get extra points for bullshit like first downs or carries or things like that. You need to know if you're 4-point or 6-point touchdowns, because it will, depend on if you're getting 6 points per touchdown, then why aren't you taking Joe Burrow? And why are you looking at, guys who run the ball a little bit more, but who throw a little bit less, right? So it kind of evens out the playing field a little bit. So You look at all of these things and you make the determination. Usually your platform will do that for you, right? It'll give you the projections for those guys based on your scoring settings, but just make sure you know them. And then I'm filling out my roster, right? If I waited on quarterback like I usually do, I'm looking at guys in the later rounds like Dak Fields, I mentioned, May, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Jordan Love is there late. Um, but the biggest thing that I'm looking at, and this is something that I think has always been the case in fantasy and still is get running backs. Get just a crap ton of backup running backs. Um, Trey Benson on the Cardinals is a big name this year. Jaden Blue is a big name. If you have ever in the last week or two been on NFL media or fantasy media, you've heard the name Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the Washington Commanders now presumes starting running back after they traded Brian Robinson away. I mean, all of these guys have this value because they're going later. But if there's an injury, for example, with Bill, if there's an injury to Austin Eckler, for example, injury to Chris Rodriguez, he steps right in. Trey Benson, if there's injury to James Conner, same thing. So you want to be getting these guys late who have the opportunity to collect all that volume. And of course, you want those guys who are talented because, again, talent, volume, hopefully good offense, hopefully bad defense, but we can't be too picky in the later rounds.
Good point. Okay. Where am I taking my kicker? Because I mean that's clearly the most important position. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I assume this is in that range of where I'm getting those other positions, right? Kicker, defense, things like that.
That's a really good point because kicker and defense for me is I play in enough leagues where I have abolished them almost completely from my fantasy life because there's so much variation, right? Like the fun part about fantasy football is there is variation. Like as much as you analyze it, like look, I play in probably about 22-ish leagues between dynasty and best ball leagues and a couple of redraft leagues coming up here, about to draft them. And in all of those leagues, the issue is like, I consider myself someone who's very knowledgeable. I consider myself someone who's very good. And I don't win all those leagues. I don't win half those leagues. You know, there are times where I have really good seasons and I win about 8, 9, 10. There are times when I have really bad seasons, really bad runs. I think last year I won 2 leagues. So it's just, you're not going to always, no matter how prepared you are, no matter how knowledgeable you think you are, there's a lot of luck and variance. But with kickers and defenses, that's the most true. So do not go out and like draft the Baltimore Ravens defense in the 10th round when you got 5 rounds left. Just, like you were saying, throw some darts, swing for the fences. You don't need, Tyler Bass on the Bills because I think he was kicker 9 last year and the Bills were still a good offense. We have no clue who's going to be the best kicker, the best defense week to week, let alone year to year. So just pick those guys the last few picks of your draft.
It's good to know. It's good to know. I'm writing that one down specifically for a friend. So, all right. So my team is drafted, right? I've gone through, I've taken all your tips. I've drafted an awesome team. I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to fantasy football is the pivots, right? So waiver wires, trades, all of those things. To me, I think those are the things that really win you because, you can sometimes you just kind of catch somebody sleeping and they don't really know, I didn't think this guy was going to be good. I'll trade him and get this player, that player, or, this person, popped all of a sudden. We had no idea who this person was. You might be the person to pick him up off the waiver wire. Do you have a strategy for that? Is there an approach for that in the leagues that those are a part of it?
Not a huge strategy. A couple of things, though. I'll say number one is I try not to go too heavy too early in almost all of my leagues. So in most leagues, you'll have either a waiver priority where you're ordered from 1 to 10, 1 to 12, based on however many players are in your league. And you get, the tiebreaker in those cases. Other leagues, you'll have FAB, which is something free agency acquisition budget, which is basically a set number of dollars that you have to play with throughout the course of the year. I would just say do not go too heavy after a player, although in the first few weeks, if you really need to go get your guy, go get your guy. Because in week one, this is where you're going to find a breakout studs. Like this was Philip Lindsay a few years ago. Years back, this was Trent Richardson. I'm trying to think of a recent example um, of a guy who came out of nowhere. Probably wasn't Chase Brown because we're a little bit more knowledgeable, but
What about
do you have a name who came in?
uh, Mason, who after McCaffrey got injured?
Jordan Mason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Although I
example
think he did
because
also get injured after that, but
yeah,
yeah.
and depending on when you drafted too, it was tough. But there are names out there the first week or two who just come out of nowhere and who pop. Like if this guy, let's say in Detroit, Isaac Tesla, who is a rookie getting a ton of steam right now. In fact, Detroit just traded one of their vet wide receivers. They say he's going to be wide receiver 3. Will it matter in that offense? I don't know. But if he comes out and gets 8 targets in week 1, he's going to be the number 1 waiver wire guy, right? So what I try to do on the waiver wire is a couple of things. Number 1, I try not to spend up too hard early, but if there's somebody who you really feel confident about, go ahead, right? I'm not going to say don't do it, but personally, I hang back. Number 2 is as soon as waivers run, I'll go in and look at the guys who are not claimed and I'll make a claim on 1 or 2 bets. And typically what I'm looking at is I'm trying to think of the guy who next week is going to be the number 1 waiver guy. And so throughout the week, if I notice a matchup or if I notice like a guy's got a string of good games coming up, he's looked good, he's faced good defenses maybe, so that suppressed his production. Maybe he was just coming off of injury, maybe he's being integrated in, maybe he's a rookie and didn't get the full workload, still grasping the playbook kind of thing. All of those things I'm looking at and considering, and I'm trying to get the guy who I think is going to be next week's number 1 waiver wire pickup a week early so I don't have to spend up.
Very smart. Yeah, I think too, sometimes, uh, at least in my experience, a guy will go off and then you're picking said player based on past performance. You're like, oh, they had an awesome week. You're
100%.
not thinking of the future variables like, oh, like they played the worst defense and that's why that player, or
Yeah,
they stepped in for somebody who, was out for a concussion or whatever the case, right? Like the opportunity was there for them to do it, but they may not necessarily have those same opportunities in the next 4 weeks
for
when
sure.
you've gone all in and like, oh, this person apparently is great. They're a Hall of Famer and no one knew. It's like, no, they just had one good week. So that's actually a really smart point. Is there anything else strategy wise that I've missed that you feel like it's like super duper important to remember?
Well, let me just walk you through what I'm doing this year, and you can tell me how you feel about it, because I don't think it's everybody's strategy.
Okay.
But this year, I want one of the top 3 tight ends. It's Brock Bowers, who's typically going first, Trey McBride, who typically goes second, and then George Kittle, who typically goes third. I think George Kittle is the best value of those 3 because he goes in the late 3rd, early 4th round, depending on how large your league is. But even still, you can get Bowers and McBride as values. But the idea is how you are building your team. If you get one of these 3 tight ends early, number 1, that means that I'm passing on top quarterbacks. Because if I'm getting a top tight end and a top quarterback, I'm deficient at running back, I'm probably less deficient at wide receiver. And those are the positions that I want depth because you have to start multiple of those players at those positions every week. So I'll pick one. If you want to go early quarterback instead of early tight end, go ahead. You feel good about Mark Andrews or Tyler Warren or Evan Ingram, one of these later tight ends, go ahead and get your early quarterback, but pick one of those. I'm going early tight end. You want to go get Jaden Daniels, go get Jaden Daniels. And then what I'm doing is I'm just building up running backs early. I'm taking 2 running backs in the first 4 rounds and I'm locking that down. Really, it's pick your flavor. Most of those guys are going to be fine regardless of situation. The only concern is injury. But I would say Breece Hall is the one guy that I would actively avoid. He's kind of a landmine just in terms of the usage that they're talking about. But otherwise, you really can't go wrong with a guy in the first 4 rounds at running back. And then rounds 5 through 8, I'm taking 3 wide receivers in those 4 rounds. I mentioned a lot of them already, but Teteroa McMillan, JMO, George Pickens, Pearsall, Egbuka is a guy I want to leave all my drafts with. He's a rookie on Tampa Bay. You got Jalen Waddle, Matthew Golden, Steph Diggs. There's a few more names in there, but I want wide receivers in the middle round. I got running backs and my tight end early, and then I'll round it all out late with a quarterback as well, because the way that what that does for me when I'm building my team is I know I don't need to worry about tight end, right? Those guys are locked in if they're healthy, they're playing. I don't need to draft another tight end. I can, but I don't need to. I'm locked in at running back. Those guys are healthy, they're winning. At wide receiver, I'm making bets on talent. So, but those guys are interchangeable, and you can usually find a replacement wide receiver much easier than the other positions on the waiver wire. Running back, those guys will become available because of injury to other players. But at wide receiver, those guys will just pop, and you'll be able to kind of pick and choose which guy you want. So if one or two of my wide receivers doesn't work out from the middle rounds or from the later rounds, I can very easily supplement them from the wire. So 2 stud running backs, early tight end for me, middle round wide receiver, and then fill it all out late. That's how I like to build this year.
There you go. That's the winning formula for fantasy football this year.
We hope so.
Asterisk. We cannot make
Yeah.
we cannot guarantee these claims. So I'm kidding. Okay, no, that I like the way that you went through everything, because, like you said, there's so much depth at wide receiver, right? Like, you should look at it as an opportunity to kind of grab in different spots, but obviously you can only play one tight end, and yeah, that's really, really smart. Any last thoughts? Any final things for us casuals who are diving back in?
Please, I wouldn't call you casuals. I'd call you normals, and I would
normies,
call myself
yes.
a sicko, a freaking sicko for this stuff, man.
Yeah.
But that's also why I think you should follow our content, because at least we know what we're talking about over the past couple of years, because we're sickos. But yeah, man, I just think that overall have fun, right? Don't go too crazy with this stuff. Listen, I don't really particularly care if you listen to me or my content or somebody else, but find a couple knowledgeable people, consume that content a little bit, make your own decisions, and ultimately have fun with it. If you're supposed to draft a guy in the 5th round, but you want another guy who's going in the 7th round, and you're not sure if he's going to be there, just draft that guy. Have fun. Pick the guys that you want on your team, that you believe in. Because at the end of the day, that's going to feel much sweeter to win the damn league with the guys that you always knew were going to go off against your friends who you've been wanting to beat for years. So, you're going to have less fun. You're going to be like, Jeremy told me to draft this guy. But I'm also a good person to blame if you fail. So, that's all the ways.
There you go. He will take all of the heat if your team does not win.
Bring it.
Yes, and that's why we didn't tell people where you are. Just somewhere across the Atlantic Ocean. They can't actually find you, but they can hit you up at the Fantasy Football Universe and put all their hate into the comments. Yeah. So I didn't prep you for this last thing, but Aaron and I every week we do a dad rule. You, sir, are by far, of all the guests that we've had, I believe, the most senior dad.
I'm an old man.
You're a young man. You're one half of the coolest parenting duo that I know.
Well, I appreciate you.
So kudos to that. You're also the reason why I want to become an Italian citizen after our lovely trip to Italy. So I don't know if you know that, but yes, I've been fantasizing about becoming a truffle farmer ever since.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So do you have a dad rule, a rule that you sort of we usually pick something that we try to live by, so to speak, or for us, obviously, Coleman is one. Aaron's daughter, happy birthday, Beanie. She just turned 2 years old, so we're much younger in the game. So impart some dad rules on us if you have anything that stands out.
It's so different at every stage, right? So I think the biggest rule is to just, I think these two things that I'm thinking about are connected. The first thing I'll say is just kind of sit back and enjoy it, because it changes so fast, right? My boy is 10. He's going to be 11 in a week and a half. He's got his 11th birthday. They're doing like a graffiti party, right?
Nice.
But like I can remember when he was 1, 2 years old, right? And how tiny he was and holding him. And, it just moves so fast. Try to really absorb that in because it changes and every stage is has its own challenges and its own like amazing pieces to it. But with that, I would say, and this is more of a personal thing for me, I'm not sure if you struggle with this or other people struggle with this, but I need to learn to shut up more. I think like I'm always trying to be like, hey, do it this way and let's try this and let me teach you that and let's do this. And it's like, just shut up, let him be and do his thing and grow into the person he's going to be and be more of a guide. So I'm really trying to step into like the guide mode
Mm,
now as opposed to like the example mode and because I've done plenty of that and I think that if there's one thing that I wish I had done from the jump, it's like just it's all going to be okay, keep him alive. That's your main goal. Make sure he's he develops into a decent human, and then the rest is on him. So even at the early stages. So I'm doing my best to shut up more and just let him grow into himself.
I love that, man. That is really, really good stuff. Like I can see the areas where I am probably a little too hands on, which is like, maybe just let him do it. Maybe just let
Still
him
there.
figure it out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I could and I can also see how the older because I think what's funny, like right now, I think even though he's 1 years old, that he has like way more ability to understand what I'm saying. And sometimes it's just like
Sure.
I sometimes I have to remind myself, like, dude, you're kind of talking to yourself. Like he has no idea what half of the things he can pick out maybe one or two words. He understands the sentiment, he understands tone of voice, but like he's
Yes.
not picking up
Yes.
on certain things. And even in talking with other friends and people that I know who have kids who are a little bit closer to Carter's age, like uh you realize like 8, 9, 10, 11. It's like you think you look at them and you're like, oh, you're so advanced, and it's like no, they still have the mind, they still have the mind of a kid sometimes, and sometimes we
Yeah.
forget that. So I even have to remind myself like, hey, like he's like just take it easy, like don't get too upset if he doesn't do something right the first time, like he's one, it's fine. So
Yeah.
yeah, sound advice, sound advice for sure.
Hey, we're always learning. We're always learning.
Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me on the No Rules podcast. Please tell the people one more time where they can find your content, where to follow you, where to subscribe, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and thank you, Malik, for having me. Really appreciate it. It's long overdue
Yes.
for us to get on a podcast. You're going to have to return the favor and come on my show. We'll have to talk some fantasy,
Yeah.
some more fantasy. But we're at the Fantasy Football Universe. We do our thing over on Twitter. We're also on YouTube. We're also on TikTok, but YouTube is kind of the main one that we're trying to push everybody towards. We've had some good growth in the last couple of years, but we're really going to try to make a push this year and then especially next year to turn it into a full-fledged company. We put out daily content. We got Devi League, so developmental league content. We got Dynasty League content. We got Redraft League content. We produce daily content all off season, all in season. It's all there for you. So come check us out. And if you like what you see, follow, like, subscribe. We'd love to have you as a regular.
Yes. 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 All of those things. Jeremy, thank you. Yeah, I'll come on the Fantasy Football Universe, and you guys can talk way over my head, and I can be like, I know some of those names.
Well, listen, draft your team and then come on and then we'll break it down. We'll talk
All
about it.
right, perfect, perfect. I will do that. I will do that. All right, Jeremy, thanks
Nice.
for joining us. It's been another episode of the No Rules Podcast. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.